the influence of literature, the classic Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, because we see, and I read your newsletter. By the way, I invite people to subscribe to your newsletter. It is really a complete, serious teaching that you provide through the newsletter. Tell us more about the influence of those literature for someone who would want to learn and read about Babaji Kriya Yoga. What is it that you would suggest for us? Because there's so many that has been written yet. How do we start?
Yes. Well, we do have all of the 25 years of quarterly journals in the archive on our website. On the top menu, you'll see the word resources, the resource, and under it you'll see articles. And you can go and look at the titles of any that are there and be able to read them online. I would say that a person who is filled with doubts, questions, whose mind is creating these kinds of issues, their nature is best served by cultivating what we call jnana yoga, the cultivation of knowledge and wisdom, the seeking of answers to questions. And it can be done through the publications that we've published, which are numerous, as well as the journal. A person who, for example, is suffering physically or has nervous problems, stress problems, we'd encourage them to practice the asanas, the physical yoga. This is according to Krishna's teaching in the Bhagavad Gita. It depends on what's called your nature, your svabhava. A person who, on the other hand, feels drawn to turning within, to seeking silence of the mind, they would practice the Raja Yoga. A person who feels like they want to serve others through their actions, this is Karma Yoga. And a person who is drawn to expressing love for others or love for God or love for God in others, you should practice Bhakti Yoga according to the Bhagavad Gita. The tradition that you mentioned of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, these are allied with or expressions of the oldest darshan or philosophical perspective in India known as samkhya, which Patanjali was also expressing. And it is a dualistic perspective which posits two poles of reality, the subject and the object, the seer and the seen, the soul and nature. And it encourages one to think about the Lord in a way that's familiar to most people in the West as someone who is out there, who's someone who's separate from us, and to cultivate devotion in a relationship of bhakti. The tradition of the Siddhas is what's called monistic theism, and it sounds like a contradiction, but it can probably best be expressed through the metaphor of someone who sees a mountain from a distance. It's like a person who is wondering about the existence of God from a distance. God seems to be inaccessible, unknowable, not even sure if one can approach it, but at some point you may become familiar with someone who is a guide on the mountain, and you may begin to have social relationship with this person. This is the first stage, which is referred to in the Siddha literature as charya, of fraternity with devotees of the Lord. And at some point, that person or their activities bring you to a path which leads up the mountain, and you start to climb the mountain. You become more familiar with it, and this second stage is referred to as Kriya in the literature of the Siddhas, where you are performing various activities, actions with awareness is the word for Kriya, whether they are internal or external, with trying to make sacred your activities. This brings you to a higher stage on the mountain where you start to manifest some of the qualities of the mountain, some of the divine, qualities and virtues of a saintly person or of a yogi, and that is the name of the third stage, yoga. And the fourth stage, you reach the top of the mountain, and the mountain, you can no longer see it as other than yourself because you're standing on top of it. And this is also referred to as jnana, or wisdom, where you realize that you are the mountain, and there's a state of union or oneness, unity and diversity. So the monism is, of course, what theologians refer to as those traditions which are non-dualistic. The term in Sanskrit is Advaita, and non-dualism means there is only one. It does not posit the existence of a supreme being. It does not posit the existence of souls separate from the supreme being. It says that fundamentally there is only one being, and that everything else is an appearance. This is a predominant, one of the major schools or perspectives in the traditions of India, and it's growing in popularity in the West. Monistic theism captures this analogy, which is captured by this analogy that I just gave. You begin your relationship with the truth as something which is dualistic. You're separate from the mountain, but when you reach the end of the path, you are identified with it as something which is within you. And so it allows for people to begin in a dualistic relationship with the Supreme Being or the Lord or the truth, and ultimately come to a more impersonal realization.